In this video, we're going to add a slider to our page, and we're also going to resize it so that it fits the images that we have. So I'm on the home page, and the first thing I want to do is to move this text and contact button out of the way. So I'm just going to select the marquee around it. I'm just going to move it to the right. I'm also going to delete this image, and I'm going to go to the Assets panel, down to Sliders and Panels. I'm going to click Browse. Now I'm going to choose under Sliders and Panels, I'm going to choose the very first slider. And as you can see, it's added to the Slider and Panels pane. I'm just going to click Close. I'm going to drag the slider to the page, just like that. Okay. So that I've got more room to work with, I'm just going to collapse the Assets panel. I'm also just going to remove the guides. So that's View Guidelines. Just going to zoom in. Okay. Now the best panels to work with when you're working with the sliders is the Objects panel. So on the right, that's Objects, and also the Transform panel. Just so that I've got a little bit more room, I'm going to collapse the Swatches panel. And there you can see all the objects that are on the pasteboard and on the home page. Since I only want to work with a slider, under Show, I'm going to select Slider. And now that will just show me all the objects that are associated with the slider. If I just expand here, you can see that there's one slider followed by 5 slider panels. The panels contain the images that are in the default slider. And as the transitions happen, these images will be presented. Now it's important to remember, it's not the images that are presented. It's actually, if I expand, it's actually the slider panel, everything within that slider. So if there was text or if there was video, then as the slider goes from one panel to the next, it will move all of those objects as well. Okay, so the first thing I want to do is I've only got 3 images. So I'm just going to select the last panel and delete that, and then the next one as well. I also don't want this blue quick shape around the slider. I'm just going to select that and delete that as well. And also there's a slider foreground, and if I expand that, you can see it's got 2 buttons. These are likely to be next and previous buttons. I don't want those, so again I'm just going to delete them. And that just leaves me with 3 panels with images in them. And I'm just going to select one of the images, and as you can see in the Transform panel, the width is 638 with a height of 244, which is different to the images that I have. In mine, the width is 620 and the height is 260. Now the width we're not too worried about at the moment, but if I were to change the height of this image, it will overlap these navigation buttons. So the first thing I'm going to do is move those out of the way. Just like that. Okay, now the next thing to remember is that if your images are larger than the actual main panel, so that's this one, those images will move outside of the panel, so it will no longer consider them to be part of the slider. So the first thing we want to make sure is that our main slider panel is large enough so that if things move about, they don't actually slip outside the slider, they're actually still within it. So I'm just going to move a little bit to the left. I'm just going to resize that main slider panel. Just like that. So now if I resize this image, I don't have to worry about it falling outside the scope of the slider. Right, so I'm just going to pick the first image, and I'm going to resize it using the Transform tool. And its size will be 620 by 260. As you can see, it's actually moving. It shouldn't be. This is a little bit of a glitch. But as you change the width and the height, it should actually be anchored to the top left, but it does move. And that's fine. So now we'll move on to the next one. And then the final one. Okay, so we've resized those images, but we want to change them with ours. I'm just going to click the first image, just going to go to Replace Picture from my desktop. I'm just going to pick one, click Open. Now with this image you can add the alt text as we previously did, or you can add a hyperlink to it as well. So I'm just going to add a hyperlink. So right click, hyperlink, site page, about us. You can add the normal attributes that you could add to an image if it was just on the regular page. So I'm going to move to the second panel and change this image as well. And then the last one as well. Okay, so we've added all of our images. Okay, so now we want to make sure that our main slider panel fits snugly around these images. So if we click on the main panel, you can see it's anchored at a top left position of 119 pixels. So we want our images to all be there as well. So again, I'm just going to go through each one and change their anchor position to 119 as well. Okay, and since we know that the width of the images are 620 and the height is 260, we're going to change the width and the height of the panel as well. So the width is 620 and the height is 260, just like that. And we can then just move this navigation selector up and just resize it. And if we want, we can just move the entire slider panel and slider up just like that. Okay, so that's pretty much added our images and resized the slider. So I'm just going to preview that by pressing Alt 1. And there's our image. And if we hover over it, our cursor changes to the pointer, suggesting there was a hyperlink there. And we can transition through all the images and they fit nicely. Of course, you don't have to just have images. You can add other objects to the slider as well. So for example, if I choose slider panel 1 and I click on the image, I can add a quick shape just here. And I'm just going to go and expand the swatches panel. And I'm going to give it a background color of green. I don't want a line. I'm just going to add a text frame as well. I'm just going to make it white and bigger. Bigger than that. Just also going to apply transparency to that, just like that. And I'm just going to highlight that all, group it, right click, hyperlink, site page, about us. Okay. And we've added a nice little caption with a hyperlink to that image. So again, I'm just going to preview it. And there you go, hyperlink over it. And as it transitions to the next panel, it takes that caption text with it as well. Okay, so I'm just going to go and move back some of the text that we moved to the right. Obviously, we've got too much text and too much heading, so I'm just going to remove some of that and just tidy it up a little bit. Just like that. Cool. Okay, and join me in the next tutorial where we will continue working on this page and we'll add a slightly different slider and some text to the middle section.